Welcome to Love Them Tender, where we find the love in big-hearted books, movies, and TV. I'm Alexandra Hidalgo, and I'm so glad you're here. Elizabeth Strout has a new book. It's called The Things We Never Say. And in this book, she makes a pretty compelling argument for how secrets can be deadly, but there's an antidote. Elizabeth Strout is a Pulitzer Prize winning author. She tends to deal with very dark topics, but she turns them around in a generous manner. So even though the stories she tells are full of heartbreak and often death and isolation, her characters find a way to look at the world with compassion and empathy. So the things that they go through make them become the kind of people we'd like to have in our lives. It's a really difficult thing to pull off, but she does it. We're all dealing with very difficult things. The world is in upheaval right now. And finding somebody who can tell stories about those and still have the characters come out with wisdom and compassion is a gift and a model for maybe how to live. In this case, we're going to follow Artie Dam, a 57-year-old history teacher whose life gets completely unraveled by the secrets he has kept, by the secrets that others have kept from him, by secrets that people thought he knew and he didn't know. Everything revolves around secrecy. And yet, he's one of the kindest characters I've ever found on the page. When we find out that people have been keeping secrets from us, we feel betrayed because we've been living a reality that was incomplete, and the other people who knew the fuller picture were just sitting there with that information and they didn't give it to us. And it makes us feel like fools and we start revisiting everything that happened. That's for all secrets that are kept from us. But when the secret that has been kept from us affects our whole identity, then it's a much, much bigger issue to work through, because then our whole life is in question. For Artie, what he learns is that his wife, Evie, was tired of waiting for him to be able to conceive a baby with her. They were struggling, so she went off and had an affair with her neighbor, Reginald, and conceived Artie's and Evie's son, Rob, that way. Now, Rob by now is an adult and he has learned this, and then he shares it with Artie. And what that does for Artie is that he has to rethink the last 3 decades of his life. He has to rethink his marriage because his wife didn't just cheat on him, she also then kept up this facade from him. He has to rethink his role as a father because his son is not his biological son. That's the easier part for him because with his son there was no betrayal, and his son and him love each other so much. So Artie is a good man and his response immediately is, oh no, you're my son. It doesn't matter what the DNA says, I'm the one who raised you. But for his marriage, it's very, very, very difficult, because when you find out that you've been living a lie for 30 years with your wife, it really gets you to rethink your most important relationship. Marriage tends to be what we build our lives around, especially long marriages. And for him, that foundation is based on something that he didn't know about, but she did. And it really drills a hole in his heart, as secrets that have to do with our whole identity tend to do. Secrets that have been kept from us are very painful. But when we keep secrets, it erodes us from within. Those are just as bad, if not worse. And it doesn't have to be a humongous secret. Even smaller secrets can create these walls between people that really hurt our relationships. In the case of Artie Dam, as he spiraled from all the secrets that had been kept from him and his sense of isolation, he found himself shoplifting, and he shoplifted a couple nice shirts at this store by a man named Charles Schwartz, and the guy caught him and just put him in a room, and Artie sitting there going, oh my God, I'm a history teacher. He had been teacher of the year. He is a model for his students. And the man comes back and says, look, I've seen this happen before. You are obviously a good person. I looked you up. I'm just gonna let you go. Don't shoplift at my store again, and go figure out what is happening with you. It was the most compassionate, beautiful thing that this man does for him. It's this moment that you feel like human beings do have hope that we're gonna solve it at some point. But he can't tell anybody, because in order to explain the man's kindness, he would have to explain that it was directed at him and what he had done. As the book goes on, Charles dies. And then Artie learns even more about what a good man he was. He would go to the houses of his obese customers who didn't feel like coming into the store, and then he would measure them and he would get them shirts. This was exactly the kind of person that Artie is. Just a good man trying to make the world better. And again, he wants to honor this man's death, and he has a personal connection to him, but because the connection is tied up with his much bigger secret, which isn't just that he's shoplifting, but that his life is falling apart because of all the secrets that have been kept from him, because of the isolation of secrecy, he doesn't think he can. Until eventually he decides, you know what? I'm going to just tell the story about him helping his obese customers and memorialize this guy to my students who really do listen to me, who love me. He's a beloved teacher, and find a way to share and honor what this person did, even if it's only part of it. Because of course, we have secrets all the time, small secrets, big secrets. We never know the whole truth about anything. And it's a moment in which he's able to turn it around. And this again is one of the reasons why I think Strout is such a brilliant, compassionate writer, because yes, our main character shoplifts, but then it turns out he shoplifts from this incredible human being. And yes, he feels like he can't tell this person's story, but then he spins it and he figures it out. So even though there's great darkness in her story, there's also a big beating heart right beneath the surface. And it helps us really think about how to make it through the more difficult times in our lives. It would make sense that the secrets that have been kept from us that have to do with our lives would affect us, because they're about us. These people did something to us, or they knew something about us and they didn't tell us, and of course it hurts. But in this book, Elizabeth Strout also argues that the secrets that have nothing to do with us, that people didn't even think they were keeping from us, can also hurt our relationships. Artie has this wonderful co-teacher friend named Anne Merrill, and they've been friends for years. And the book says she's a little in love with him. And one of the reasons that she's a little in love with him is that when her husband cheated on her the last time around, because now he's cheating on her again, Artie was just great. He didn't treat her any differently. He just was the kind, all-giving, funny guy that he's always been. And that made her feel like she could make it through the very difficult experience of being cheated on. And when she realizes that her husband is cheating on her again, she confides in Artie and she tells him, "You were so good to me last time." And what goes through Artie's head is, what? He had no idea. And she is so effusive in her gratitude that he doesn't have the heart to tell her. And it makes it really, really hard for him to then help her through this new situation, because he can't talk about it the way that he could before, because he might undo the lie that he unwittingly told, or the assumptions that she made about what he knew and what he didn't know. And it's an amazing wrinkle in the secrecy study that Strout is doing here. The book shows us that secrecy is a lot more nuanced in how it gets between people, because the most damaging thing about secrets in this book, and I would argue in our lives, is that it fragments our communication. It makes it very hard for us to be open with each other. And if we can't talk to the most important people in our lives, or even the people that are not even that important, but that are part of the fabric of our lives, we're eventually going to be isolated. And when we're isolated, we humans who are social creatures start to fall apart. One of the great lines in The Things We Never Say is when Artie is reflecting on all the secrecy that he has worked through, and he says that people held within themselves a vast, unknowable universe. So it isn't just that we keep secrets from each other and that those secrets make it very hard for us to connect as humans. It's that we keep secrets from ourselves. And just like the secrets in the novel, some of them are on purpose and some of them are not. I love this idea that it's vast and unknowable because it's just so big. And of course, humans don't have an endless amount of time. So we don't necessarily have the amount of time we need to get to know everything that's within us. There's more within us than we'll ever have the time to visit and explore. And that's such a beautiful and useful way to understand who we are and why sometimes we act in ways that we can't make sense of, or why we can't keep the promises that we thought we were going to keep, or why, heaven knows, did I cry with this book? We suddenly start crying and we're like, really? This is affecting me this much? Why? There's all of these things that are happening within us that are very hard for us to know, and we have to accept that some of them we never will. And with that understanding, then we can be more compassionate to ourselves and to others, and it puts us almost in a similar level with other people, because we don't know them fully, but heaven knows we don't know ourselves fully either. The Things We Never Say gives us a pretty dire sense of the ways in which secrets can isolate us, and the ways in which there will always be secrets. We will always be, hopefully, just a little isolated, not fully isolated. We will always be faced with things we don't know. So having that understanding, this is how life is, this is the condition of being human. What do we do? How do we live this way? And how do we live in a way that we can live with. Her answer is to do as much good as you can, even within those constrictions. And in the case of Artie, the antidote to secrets is the ways in which he inspires younger people to live the lives that they want to live, again, within the constraints of isolation that all humans are living within. He has 2 students, Rhonda and Danny, that we follow throughout the book. And one of the things that Danny figures out when he's reading Othello is that for Othello, loving Desdemona, that was his occupation. And when she's gone, so is his occupation. And then he doesn't know how to live. For Artie, loving his students and his son, that was his occupation. That's the thing that gave his life meaning. And he happened to choose an occupation that allowed him to make generations to come have an easier time at life. Because for Danny and for Rhonda, both of whom are struggling mightily during the book, thanks to him, they figure out how to then live in ways that are like Artie's, meaning they are going to spend the rest of their lives helping others. And in the case of Rob, his son, he moves to Belgium because the US is struggling right now. And he finds a way to make a life there. If what you leave behind after you're gone are 3 young people, and these are symbolic 3 young people, meaning he was a teacher for many years, so he left many people like these 3 behind who are going to counter the secrecy and isolation of human existence and still try to connect and to make the world better, then you've lived a good life and you've left a beautiful legacy behind. And that is what Artie Dam does, and that is why I think Elizabeth Strout is such a powerful, moving, important writer, because she takes very dark and painful aspects of our lives and she finds a way to flip them and remind us that maybe we can't have exactly the shiny, perfect life that so many of us wish we had, but we still can make a huge, huge difference for each other, even within these constrictions of what it is to be a human. Thank you so much for watching. So tell me, what do you think? Have you read the book? Have you read her other books? What do you think about secrets? Do they play a role in your life? If you don't think they do, I bet you they do. They're all over the place. And how much do we get to know ourselves? Do we in fact have a vast unknowable universe within us? Comment, like, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Love Them Tender's reluctant cinematographer is my husband, Nathaniel Buller. Our social media managers are Lana, Elsa Hemi, and Anna Radzinski. Thank you so much for joining us, and as always, stay big-hearted.